Without further ado, I'm just going to jump in. I'll try to get a baseline idea. How many of you are familiar with OERs, what they are? Okay, that's what I thought. So we don't have to go over, what are they? The basic setup of our presentation is going to be then not talking about OERs, but really looking at a particular type of OER, which is Lumen's Waymaker, and some preliminary data from using Waymaker in several sections of Sociology 101 here at OSTOS. And then you'll hear from two of my students and maybe a third who all took the class last fall. Okay. And we're going to definitely try to leave at least 7 to 8 minutes for questions and answers. So if you have them, please know that we will save time and get to that. So just a quick look at some national data. This was compiled by Waymaker using several different institutions. If you want kind of the link or the background on the data, I can send it to you. But you see, the two areas that Waymaker seems to have a significant impact on are the percentage of students who drop and the throughput, right? So the percent of day one students who end up passing the course. Now, my results at OSTOS are a little bit different. I see a much bigger difference in this category, particularly in the WUs. And I also see significantly more students getting A's. So our data looks a little bit different, and I'll try to show you how and a little bit why. I'm assuming most of the people in the room are CUNY people or are familiar with CUNY, and so this is literally just a glimpse snapshot of what our population here at OSTOS looks like. As you can see, we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of textbooks and why OERs make sense. But obviously, if you're in the room, you're probably already on that boat sailing away. So in terms of developmental needs, though, I will try to touch a little bit on the individualized learning sort of model that comes with this particular OER and how I think, and perhaps how the students think, that helps them to be better learners and how it helps them to better understand course material. So in terms of the data you're looking at, so I compiled this data myself. I'm going to have our Office of Institutional Research look at it a little more closely. I've checked it over 3 or 4 times. I think it's about as accurate as it could be. So what I'm looking at, you'll see obviously, the N for the OER is very small. I was trained last June and I started using it in the fall. So this particular comparison is only looking at a hybrid section. So half in person, half outside. And this is the section with the OER, and these 3 ladies in the front row were all in that section of the class. And so you can see here, 86% completed that class. And when I say completed, what I'm talking about is that they made it to the point where I can give them a grade. Compared to 68% of the 108 students who've taken the same course with me as the instructor, hybrid modality using a textbook. Okay? So a pretty significant jump in the number of students that complete, which for me teaching hybrids, the biggest problem has been, and I've been teaching online for 10 years now, so it's been something I've been thinking about a while, is really just getting the students to buy into the class and to stay long enough that they might have a chance to pass. And so what I found, especially at OSTOS and also the previous institution I came from, is that many students get frustrated and they stop coming to class. They don't officially drop, but they're just not there, and so you don't have anything to grade them. Anything from which to grade them. So you can see, also sort of the big chunk of WUs and the WWN, WDs, and, if the categories aren't clear, I'll try to explain a little bit better. But of course, the WUs are those students who we just can't assign a grade to because we don't know what they're capable of, but they have not formally withdrawn from the class. And clearly this has significant implications for their financial aid and for their future at the college when they do that over and over and over. So that kind of a significant decrease is notable.
What are WDs?
So the WD was something on CUNY first. Maybe we have a registrar in the room. I only had one WD, and I think it might have been an administrative withdrawal. So I lumped it in with the W and WN just because it was nothing that I had any control over.
I've never seen that.
So the preliminary comparative data for the hybrid section. So, right, you just saw a slice of this. Again, the textbook is 108, the OER is 28. You know, so we see this kind of significant decrease in this particular number. You know, significant increase in course completion. D's and F's. Oops, I'm so sorry. D's and F's are pretty comparable. B's and C's. You know, you'll say, oh, there's more B's and C's with the textbooks. But I think what's really interesting, and you'll see this also in the sections of ESL, is that, you know, hopefully a statistically significant, once the N gets a little bit bigger, number of students are doing well in the class, like in terms of they're getting A's. And I'll also try to talk a little bit about why that might be. So this is also a comparison, same kind of setup. So 4 sections of a class that I teach of all ESL students versus 1 section of a class, same group, all ESL students, usually 35, 36. 24 students in the fall section, 82 combined in the previous 4 sections. Now you see ESL students are much more likely to complete even with a textbook, right? And you know, if you teach ESL students, you might have some ideas as to why that might be. Even if they know they're going to fail, they don't stop coming. They keep coming all the way until the end of the semester. But again, you can see, you know, from 4% from 12% WUs down to 4%. So to me, that was interesting, right? And again, these are very, very small numbers. So this is, you know, will hopefully stay the same as I look at more and more courses. So again, this is looking at it a little bit more closely. You know, same kind of thing. You see twice the number of students in the class using the OER were able to get A's. Which again, you know, more students are completing, more students are doing well. So in a nutshell, sort of the heart of Waymaker. And if you're not familiar with Waymaker, Miriam, my student, and I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and it's available on YouTube. There's lots of different ways that I can show you what Waymaker looks like. In this time frame, I didn't want to open my Blackboard shell and start walking you through a demo. But what Waymaker does that's different from other OERs. So I've taught other classes using things like OpenStax and other open resources. But I think what makes Waymaker different is that there is, the accessibility obviously is there for anything. But students like the 3 that are in the front row were accessing the materials before classes started. They were accessing all the materials before class. I used a flipped classroom approach, and so the students were reading and taking their quizzes before we covered the material in class. The quizzes were weighted very, very small, but it encouraged the students to be ready when they showed up in class. And so they were sitting in the front row last fall, just like they are now, leading class discussions because they'd read the material and they were prepared. The other thing about Waymaker specifically, right, that I think is a little bit different from other OERs is that there's a mechanism by which students get individualized student feedback. So as they're going through, and the students are going to talk a little bit more about this, but they take these quizzes, they take formative quizzes, and then they take summative quizzes, and they're given immediate feedback as to how they're doing, and then instruction on how to go back and review the sections that they didn't understand. In addition, when they take their quizzes, they get an email from me, and it's automated. So I make the emails my own at the beginning of the semester. There's a template, you can go in and edit it so that it sounds like you. But for example, when Leslie would take a quiz, and she would almost always get, you know, 80% or higher, she would get like, congratulations, Leslie, you did great on this. You know, the one learning objective that you could review is this and this and this. You can go back to module this to review further. Great job, Professor Hoyland. And, you know, a couple of times, like Leslie and Miriam and Maria and other students had emailed me back saying, thank you so much. This is great. I'm so proud of myself. Or, you know, so there was kind of this like interaction that, you know, if I'm teaching 5 sections, I'm not able to do on an individual basis with all my students. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the much more interesting part of the presentation. And Miriam and Leslie are going to share their experiences, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
So I wrote it down because I tend to be a little nervous and forget. But
Hello, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? My name is Loresley Hernandez, and I'm 31 years young. I am a nursing major, and I plan to further my education with a bachelor's to the next 4 years. I am a very proud single parent of two beautiful girls. They are the reason I am here pushing and striving to succeed to provide them things that I never had in life growing up. As a single parent, the last thing you have is time, and the first thing to disappear is money, which brings me to the benefits of Professor Hoyland's hybrid class with OER. I was quite nervous about this class, being that I never took an online course or OER at that. But I was not disappointed. The experience was extremely convenient, and I would choose OER versus heavy textbooks, expensive textbooks, any day. This allowed me to save time, money, and future back problems. The quizzes were super easy, along with the professor's helpful feedbacks, which were right then and there. I never had to wait long for a professor to give me any feedback. The program with Waymaker would benefit hostel students on any level. I believe this is what helped me get an A in Dr. Hoyland's class. And thank you, Professor, for all of your hard work and your dedication to helping us grow in this course. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just as Miriam's coming up, we're usually here all day talking about teaching and learning, and often there are a few students. So, just to thank both of them, they're not in classes today. They came in on a Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning, to share their experiences. So, with that, here's Miriam.
Good morning. My name is Miriam Rodriguez. I'm in my second semester at Ostos. As you can tell, I'm still here. I thought I was going to be home. But we are going to actually, for me, my experience with the Waymaker was very eye-opening because I am an adult woman of 50, returning back to get my degree. And the first thing I get on my first semester is, you're going to be doing a hybrid course. And I'm like, what's that? And here comes Professor Hoyland walking into the classroom, explaining to us what it was. I went into a total panic because I'm being told that I'm going to only see her once a week. And I would be responsible for the learning materials. Okay. So I get home, and that very first day I was able to get on the blackboard, get on the Waymaker, and it was very a much learning experience. To be able to understand myself as a student and how I was going to pick up this material. Most people don't want to sit there for 4 hours and read online something that you got to have in your head a week later. The Waymaker actually showed me how to study and how to pick out what was going to be important in class. And once I did the chapter and I went into the first quizzes, which was only 3 little questions, immediately it would tell me, okay, you're lacking on this, you need to go back. And it gave me the opportunity to go back and review what I missed or misunderstood and come back and take the quiz, pass it, and move on to the major quiz, which was the entire chapter. If I missed that test, it would tell me to read the same, direct me back into that chapter and guide me to specifically where I missed. By the time I was done with that chapter and we will go be back in class, I was able to answer questions that she would have. If she gave an impromptu test, I was able to take the test and pass it. It actually encouraged a lot of the young.
You're fine.
Oh, okay, I'm done. Let's go. It actually got some of the young students involved in the class, as far as when we came into the class, we weren't just solemnly walking into class, oh, okay, we gotta do this again. Yeah. Actually, the young kids were getting involved, and they were asking questions like, did you read this? Did you get that? I didn't understand this. What was that? Oh, here she comes. The Waymaker, I feel it's a great tool for the faculty to help their students go above and beyond what they can do. She didn't have to spend hours meticulously going through paperwork to find out what student needed her attention more. The Waymaker initially told her that. So she was able to come into class ready to address that student and advise that stay after class, let's talk, maybe you missed something. And that's a big deal. that would be something for you guys, the faculty members. For us students, it's a big deal to be able to know where we stand instead of waiting for the professor to tell us where we are.
Right.
And I think the major thing about the Waymaker is I didn't have to spend $120 on that ginormous book. I'm doing that now. I spent $81 on a book that we're not even using in class. And I'm not gonna get them $81 back. It's a done deal. I'm going by what the professor's teaching, because he doesn't even use the book. So that in itself, I'm losing $81 out of my pocket. The Waymaker actually has more than just the fact of teaching. As a teaching tool, it helps the professor to teach and help that student. It helps the student not spend an extra money that they do not have, that the parent has to dish in. And the students are usually just gonna throw that book everywhere. That's $100 something somewhere in the corner in their room. This is a great product, and I would even, if they had me to go out there with banners, I would do it. It's a good product. I share with you.
She has been. This is her third presentation.
Yes. I'm done.
So questions? Yes.
Have you used other adaptive learning tools that could be compared to this one? And then a follow-up to that is, my understanding is that this is O/free because of a grant with CUNY. What is the price going to be if and when that grant goes away?
So first, well, let me answer the money question first. So my understanding is that Lumen's technical support. So if I had any issues with Waymaker, because Waymaker talks to Blackboard, but Blackboard doesn't talk to Waymaker, right? So the shell goes in, the grades can be populated, but there is some maneuvering in there. And there were a few times when it was always something I forgot to do a box, I forgot to click for the quiz scores to go into Blackboard or something like that. I could immediately call someone at Lumen or email and get a response within an hour or two. So with that kind of high-speed technical support, which is even difficult with Blackboard, we don't have that kind of wraparound support. I believe the fee is $20 per student. But with an $8 million grant, in addition to, so money came in from the Gates Foundation to start this, and then more money came from the governor's office to keep it going. I think that if my data is anywhere close to what data would look like, even just in these gateway courses, where like most of my students come in with no, they come in because they don't need prerequisites for my class, right? I think that the kind of impact that providing this feedback, especially to students who are coming back to school after being out a while, students that need help learning how to study, students that need that kind of ongoing feedback from the professor. I think that it's going to be well worth investing, right? And particularly for programs like College Now or ASAP, where they're already purchasing the textbooks, the tens of thousands of dollars that they would save could easily be rolled over to pay that $20 fee. It could be rolled into, if a student was looking at paying, if they took 5 courses, $100 for, fees for a semester versus $500 in books, or even $250 in books. I mean, I think that eventually, if that issue were to come up, it would be a good problem to have. As far as other you're talking about other courseware, have I used?
Connect, let's say, McGraw-Hill.
Are there any McGraw-Hill people in the room? Okay. I don't like Connect. I've tried it. I taught in Florida, and they were really encouraging us to try it down there. And now McGraw-Hill is paying faculty $5,000 to try their stuff. I do not care for it. It's very expensive for our students. The students have to have the most updated textbook. I think it's not that smart. I think that the feedback they get from Lumen is much more sort of on point. And I also think that their content is not as high quality as what I found on Lumen. So, yeah.
2 questions.
Oh, and could you guys say who you are, just to?
Ed Volchuk, Queensborough Community College. I teach a lot, partially online courses for years. Can you add your own content to Waymaker, or modify their content? And two, what kind of quizzes are these?
Good questions. Okay, so the first is yes. So I've been teaching this hybrid course for 5 years here. So I took what I liked from my existing Blackboard shell and merged it with Waymaker. So Waymaker takes the place of my textbook, and it took the place of the quizzes I used to give on Blackboard. In terms of the quizzes, so when I went to the training in June, this was my big sort of problem with Waymaker, because the quizzes are 6 questions. They're, online, they're untimed, and I've always believed, you have to time, and they're multiple choice. So what I chose to do was to make the quizzes, I think the students took 10 quizzes, and they were 20% of the grade in my class. So they were weighted very, very, very lightly. Kind of maybe took the place of where I would have given in-class points before. I have an in-person midterm and an in-person final with heavy writing. They do a lot of writing through discussion forums. They do a lot of writing in class. And again, this is a class with no prereq. So my sort of solution was to not count it for very much in terms of their grade. Now, what I think it did, students didn't do very well on my quizzes. They said they didn't have enough time. They said they were hard. There were a lot of application questions. But I think what I was doing was, in trying to get them ready for the midterm and the final, I was killing them with quizzes. And I think particularly for students who just needed more time, it wasn't that they were cheating or looking up answers. They just needed more time. It was doing them a disservice. And so I found that students seem to have deeper knowledge in these fall sections, meaning like we had much better conversations in class. Their writing on their midterm was at least as high quality, if not higher quality. And the discussion forums were much more robust because they'd actually read the material. So, I would ask them to watch a video and then relate it to the specific theory or term that we were focusing on. And they could do that much more fluidly because, I kind of see these quizzes as like a little pat on the back, like, good job, you did your reading, right? Now, a student could go in, they could take the quiz, get every single question wrong, and take it again, but they're going to get 6 different questions, and that's their second attempt. So if they bomb it the second time, that's their grade. But very few students did that. I mean, there was almost every student took every quiz twice. Almost every student improved from the first to the second. And just that kind of like the ability to be able to do it again if they screwed up, the ability to take their time if they needed it, and then not having the same quizzes regurgitated, I think at least gave me comfort enough that I felt like it was a reasonable assessment of at least did they read and did they have a broad understanding of what's going on. And it also informed the class lectures, because if they were all missing the same concept, then I knew to plan my lecture around that. And so that, was really different, I think, in terms of like, instead of me trying to figure out, and after teaching the class so long, I know what the difficult things are for them, but it was a much more informed way to do it. Okay, sorry, 1 minute left. Yeah.
So just looking at from the implementation of this into your course, from your perspective, how smooth between the training, getting the whole setup going, and then actually engaging the students and making them feel comfortable using it. Just from hearing one of your students earlier, that comfort of having to do a lot of things online. What were some of the processes that you kind of had to do to get over that initial fear?
Well, so I think what I did is parallel to what I do in regular hybrid courses, because they, if they're unfamiliar with the online environment, they need that kind of gentle intro anyway, at least in my class, because usually I'm getting them right away. So, sometimes it's just me demoing in class, the first 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes it's, me really encouraging students who haven't been on it to come into my office, individually. But the same kind of strategies you'd use in any online course, I think, apply here. What works for your students and your population. But with ours, it's being friendly, being open, knowing that they're going to have questions, and trying to respond to them. Is that it? If there's one more, I'll stay. You can ask me. All right. Thanks, everybody.